guys, what's going on? RedMaster here, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to go into the neutral card review for Dwarves and Dinosaurs expansion cards that were brought to us about maybe 3 weeks ago. I know it's probably been even like close to maybe a month by now, but you know. Woo! So, with that being said, we're trying to jump right into it, starting with our first card right now. Whoa, RedMaster. Sorry to cut you off there, past me, but future me actually realized I forgot to mention that there is something a bit different in this video in terms of how I normally do card reviews. For this video, I'm actually going to be implementing a new rating system. It was suggested that I actually decided, and you'll see in the video, to implement a ranking system where I rank cards, you know, from about, I guess, our lowest is 0.5 in this video, all the way up to 5. 5 being, you know, every deck must have this card, to 0.5 being never ever play this card. So you'll see the different rankings I take into effect and how each card ranks, and I'm hoping to implement this for future additional cards later on as well. So yeah, with that being said, now past self, you can go and take it away for the first card. And our first card to start off today's card review will be actually the Baby Dinos. Now, the Baby Dinos are a 1 gold unit with a 2/2/2 stat line, so 2 attack, 2 health, and 2 movement, with an interesting initiative ability of giving other dinosaurs +1/+1 attack, +1 health. Now, with the Baby Dinos, they are in fact the core of dinosaur decks. You know, it really gives power to other dinos that you have, including Magmasaur, including T-Rex, Dino Rider, and that can just create some amazing power units pretty early from turn 4, turn 5, all the way up until possibly turn 7, turn 8, etc. However, on their own, they're not as strong as an early game unit as some might believe. If you play him without any dinosaurs on the field, you're essentially losing initiative ability, and you just have a 1 gold 2/2 unit that has 2 movement. Not a very good start to a game if you decide to automatically toss out Baby Dinosaur. So if you have a Baby Dino, always be sure to play him alongside another dinosaur so it can really benefit the initiative ability play, and just, you know, making sure that you're giving a, again, buff to something, because on its own, Baby Dino is not that strong. So I think because of its strong synergy and basically being the foundation of dinosaur decks, this card will get a rating of about maybe 4 out of 5. And the next card we'll move into from here is Dwarven Greed. Now, I do not like Dwarven Greed at all. There's a lot of things, you know, visibly wrong with this card. Let's start off with the fact that it is an epic card. To me, the card doesn't really deserve this epic rating, just because, you know, not that it's 1 gold or anything, the ability does not deserve this epic rating. If you actually look at it visually, for 1 gold, you're gaining 2 gold. That's sort of like a free Merchant's Favors where you're gaining 1 gold, and that card is certainly not an epic. So, you know, you could tell that this card doesn't really seem correct in a standpoint. Also, the fact that you have to have dwarves in play just to gain a gold. Why play this card then when there you can gain, you know, put a Merchant's Favor? This is essentially like putting a harder to play Merchant's Favors in your deck. So overall, not that impressed with this card, and, you know, because of all these flawed features and stuff like, you know, and just it's a very messed up card. I'm gonna leave it at that. So to me, this card's gonna get a rating of about 0.5. That's how bad we're going. 0.5 out of 5. Our next card that we'll be looking at will be the Hungering Pumpkin. Now, for 1 gold, you can get a 3 attack, 3 movement, and 3 health body. Not that bad for 1 gold, I believe. Maybe one of the higher powered one in terms of possibly attack. Not so sure about the defensive part, but definitely one of the stronger in terms of attack. Now, this card does come with a price. As you can see, the initiative, he has an ability of discarding a card at random from your hand. So playing him really is technically a big risk, since you are discarding at the early stages. Technically, in the early stages, you want to have all the cards you need. So I would say this sort of initiative is a very big risk. If you're using Pumpkin, I would say you're probably going all in with him. and at that point the discard is not really effective. Or if you draw him out later in the game, you maybe have enough cards to waste. So if you do throw a Hungering Pumpkin, maybe what you'll lose is something that's not important to you at this time. But again, this card's going to get a lower-ish rating because of the fact that you're wasting that card, and that could be a potential huge risk and possibly even cost you the game in some crucial points, depending on what card is wasted. So because of this card's going to get a rating of about maybe 2.5 out of 3, or no, 2.5 or 3 out of 5. Our next card to look into for this evening will be Inspire. For 1 gold, you can give your combat units, so all of your combat units out in the field, plus 1 health. Now, this one I'm not going to go into too much detail because, I mean, honestly, straightforward. This card is almost like a spell version of Brewery. Pretty much, it kind of is. I mean, look at Brewery. It gives the same ability, same price, but the difference here is that that just the brewery itself is a building, meaning it will permanently last, rather than just the Inspire, which can be just flat out used once for everything out in the field. I mean, with the Inspire, you have the benefit of, if the brewery disappears, then, your units lose that health, even if they don't get damaged. Whereas Inspire, they have to be damaged, so that's where, things can differ a tiny bit. But again, not like a whole lot of, oh, this is, I kind of lost what I was going to say there. But you kind of get my point here a little bit. It's just that the brewery is a building rather than this, which is a neutral spell, which only has a one-time use. So, because of the similarities with brewery and the fact that it can only be used once, but also with the fact that you have a permanent health rather than a possible temporary health, I would say the rating on Inspire is going to be about 1.5 out of 5. From there, we move on to Lumberjack. Lumberjack actually has the exact same stats as Pumpkin. Now, here's where it differs a bit. You have no ability on Lumberjack, so it's sort of like a just basic unit. And it's, 3/3, just like the Pumpkin, 1 gold, just like the Pumpkin. However, again, no ability and 2 movement. Now, this card has seen some strong play in typically slower paced decks, such as Last Will and Dwarfs, where the units in them are generally slower, which is good to see Lumberjack, included, because, he was an old card. He did disappear from Monster Island until now, so he's only a recent return, which is very nice to see Lumberjack being brought back in a sense. But yeah, pairing this with Pumpkin, those two are possibly the strongest one-drop. So if you're looking for a strong early drop, you either take Pumpkin, who's faster and has a more devastating ability, or you take Lumber with no ability, but he is slower. So it's sort of a mix between it's a choice between the two of them. But I would say overall, Lumberjack is a nice, beefy card, and since he has seen a lot of play since, and successful play at that, I think Lumber deserves this rating. And for that rating, he's going to get a 3.5 out of 5. Next on the list is Minor Upgrade. Now, Minor Upgrade is when looking at this card, you're kind of going back on the same comparisons made with Inspire and Brewery. However, except with Minor Upgrade, you're, comparing Minor Upgrade to Armory. Now, here's the problem. Minor Upgrade, even though it's very early on, whereas Armory is 5 gold, Minor Upgrade is only going to affect 1 unit, which is the problem. If this guy was like a all-around beefer, like an all-around armory types thing, like the Inspire spell is, you could possibly see it have some play, not a whole lot, possibly, but of course you could definitely elevate its play by making this card target all units rather than only 1. Other than that, it has the same ability as Armory, just like the whole comparison with Inspire and Brewery. So, because of that, and the fact that it does only target 1 card, whereas Inspire actually targets all units, this card is going to get a rating of about 1 out of 5. The card we'll be talking about tonight will be Pulverize. Now, Pulverize, when looking at this card, you can kind of make some similar arguments that we did with Dwarven Greed. First of all, no one really uses an ability like this in general when making the deck, destroying an enemy building. You don't see cards like Avalanche being played, which sort of already puts this card at a little bit of a disadvantage, seeing as how, with an ability like that, it may not be run. Secondly, the target is random, so that can be a bit of an issue. Usually, well, sometimes nowadays you'll have probably only about one building out at a time, but when there are decks that utilize 2 or 3 buildings at a time, it's kind of annoying if this pulverize is going to hit the wrong thing, and now you're going to have to figure out a way to deal with your actual target all over again. So, you know, things aren't looking too strong there. Thirdly, another dwarf requirement. You know, people aren't going to be throwing this into dwarf decks. You know, even though it says, you know, must have dwarf in play, people aren't going to throw this into a dwarf deck, nor are they going to try and tech in for, you know, they're not going to try and include dwarfs for, you know, just because they want the pulverize. Doesn't seem very good here. And, you know, all these factors together, they create not a very good card. Terrible card. No. Bad card. And because of that, pulverize will be getting a 0.5 out of 5. The next card we'll be looking at will be Shockwave. For 1 gold, select a friendly unit and knock away all nearby enemy combat units. Now, Shockwave can also push diagonally, which is where this card gets a little bit fancy. But in general, Shockwave is a very gimmick-like card. You know, it has no real strategic advantage being thrown into a deck. If you draw it from a random ability like Flux, Dragon's Horde, you know, cards like that, it's certainly not a bad pull like some of the other options out there, but it's not the best pull. So this kind of falls in like the gimmicky sort of category, again, in my opinion. The only real tactic that this card could give you is probably buying some time if the, opponents are already rushing your face. Then, you know, you could Shockwave and push them back. But that's even if you're including it, which I highly doubt people will include Shockwave into their decks. Because of the, you know, again, we're going back on it, but it's so true. It's such a gimmicky effect. And, you know, because of this, I think Shockwave is going, well, not I think, I know, Shockwave will actually be receiving a rating of about 1 out of 5. Next card we're looking into will be the Assyrian Cultist. Now, the Cultist for 2 gold, you'll summon a body with about 1 attack, 3 health with about 2 to 3 range, and 2 movement. Unfortunately, the Cultist, in my opinion, you know, it's very similar to a more popular card, the Mage Apprentice. The Mage Apprentice is, of course, a common as well, but with that, you're also getting a free spell on the Awaken. It just doesn't seem like unfortunately, when looking into Cultist, you can kind of compare this to Mage Apprentice and see some of the similar reasons why you're throwing this card into decks. However, being that this card has no ability to really reinforce it as a valid option, it just becomes sort of outplayed and outclassed by the Mage Apprentice, which is a much better option, seeing as how you get that spell, thereby canceling out the Cultist as a viable option. So, unfortunately, because of Cultists being kicked out of its deck slot by Mage Apprentice, Assyrian Cultist will receive a rating of 1.5 out of 5. The next card where we will be going over actually will be Battering Ram. Now, Battering Ram has actually seen a surprising amount of play since it came out. It's been really actually used in heavy aggression and heavy rushing decks, because basically Battering Ram does have the same kind of ability as the War Elephant, if you will. For 2 gold, it's a focus spell that deals 2 damage plus an additional 2 if you're striking the castle. So, that's a total of 4 possible damage to the castle, and combined with Elephant could do some serious early face damage for the low cost price of 2 gold. So that's not bad. Not bad whatsoever. So because of these sort of factors, Battering Ram is actually going to get a rating of about maybe 3 out of 5. So I think that's a good place to leave it at, 3 out of 5. So we'll be looking into the Miner. Now the Miner actually has been the core of most dwarf decks, seeing as how it's a low-cost dwarf. I think the lowest costing dwarf out there. Neutral, of course. And those stat lines for 2 gold are pretty solid at 4/4. Despite being slow, it does, again, have that great value of trading out with at least maybe 1 or 2 things before it gets taken out. And of course, again, his low cost is probably the optimal range for bringing forth a ton of dwarf spells like Archive, Weapons, Mithril, etc. Stuff we actually will be going over later on in the video. Later on, actually, well, unfortunately, you'll find that out later on. But because of this, Miner will actually get a rating of 4 out of 5 for being this nice core of dwarf decks. 4 out of 5 for Miner. Our final card of the evening will be Dwarven Construction. Now for 2 gold, Dwarven Construction, again, has that dwarf requirement, must have a dwarf in play, but your buildings and castle gain +3 health. Not a heal, gaining +3 health. So you could possibly accelerate your castle to about, let's see, 15 health when using Dwarven Construction. Now this is pretty good. However, we have to compare this with the other castle health gaining card that is out there currently for Crusaders, and that's known as Holy Bulwark. Now, on the pros side for Dwarven Construction, sorry, I have to fix myself there. It is cheap, of course, at 2 gold. The price is good. The health gain is actually better in Dwarven Construction than in Bulwark, so that's another thing to look at. And as well as, you know, those 2 pros, it has a dwarf limitation, but, you know, I think that's where we start to get into the cons here, because when you have the dwarf requirement, you have to use it with at least some sort of dwarf or dwarf deck. And again, this won't give it to units like Bulwark, unfortunately. This will only restrict it to buildings and castle, not units, unlike Bulwark. Bulwark, of course, is in that 3x3 area. It's a little bit more expensive at 3 gold, gives +2, but again, no dwarf requirement, and can be played with units. So you really see the kind of pros and cons, and it really gives a steady choice between, alright, which one do I want to go for? Which is great to see cards, you know, competing for each other in a deck slot. It's always great to see. So with that being said about Dwarven Construction, this card's probably going to get a rating of 2.5 out of 5. Just going to limit that rating because of the dwarf requirement, and it's, you know, if it wasn't more in dwarf decks, then it would probably have a higher rating. But because it's in dwarf decks, we might, you know, it's got that dwarf limitation. It's sealed in 1 archetype, so unfortunately this card's going to get a 2.5 out of 5. Like I said, with Dwarven Construction, this is actually the final card we'll be going over for now. However, there will be a part 2, as there are so many more neutrals to cover that we, again, haven't gone over yet. So, be sure to catch the next part later, coming out sometime later this week. And again, hope you're all excited for that. So with that being said, guys, that's probably going to end the video today. If you guys did enjoy the video, please be sure to give it a like, share with your friends, and comment down below what you think about these neutral cards. And of course, if you are new to the channel, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. You know, that's all you guys need to do to show your support for the channel. Is just clicking that subscribe button. And of course, if you are new to the game, if you're working on Android or Steam, you can go over to the options and hit enter code. Enter code RedMaster. If you haven't used a code already, to gain 5 free card packs plus a castle skin. That's a pretty great deal. Absolutely free. So with that being said, guys, until next time, stay gaming.